morning. I just got in from California yesterday, so it's like 6 a.m. to me right now. So this coffee is delicious, but I think I'm gonna trade it real fast. Hold on. All right. There we go. Oh, yeah. All right, this is the 2015 results party. Who here has taken my Ruby survey before? Okay, fair number. But I'm gonna start talking about my favorite subject, myself. I made this thing, Haml. We'll get to that later in some of the statistics. I also used to work at the Wikimedia Foundation where, this is out of order. I was the CTO of MoveWeb, sorry, the Wikimedia Foundation. I built and ran the mobile site for like 3 years, the first one. And made it from that, and they're like, built that, and then now they've made it way better, so they finally like hired a designer, because this was my attempt at making it not look like crap. But you probably know this thing a little better. I'm the original creator of Sass. I've also run the lib Sass project. They'll learn less and less these days because there's some crazy C++ people just going crazy on it, and bless them. Yeah, so it's like the C port of Sass, which I know isn't super popular in the Ruby community because it requires like setting up some stuff. Anyhow, but Node people go crazy for this. If you use Ember, this is what you're actually using. I also wrote a book with my husband. I put on a conference. I'm the CEO of our consulting company that I run with him called Rarebit, and we run a company called WordSet. And we have a podcast called We Have a Microphone at wehaveamicrophone.com. Is that not enough? What more do you need from me? I'm also an artist. So, is something funny about that? Is it supposed to go this way? This is on the second floor of this hotel. As soon as the elevator doors open, you see this. This is a piece of art that is hung on the side for some reason and is for sale for $1,700. It's like the old man in the sea or something, a ghost of Ponce de Leon, maybe. I don't know, it's awesome. And they hung it sideways. Like, anyhow, so go enjoy that if you have a room key. Actually, I'll just take a group later. I'll use a room key, we can all laugh at it. Sorry, did I not have enough logos? I'll just, there you go, here's the logo section. Comcast, what? All right, so let's take a little trip to the past. Way back to a year, 2008. It was so long ago that New Jersey that year was the first state to apologize for slavery in the North. So, ye olde times in 2008. Also, a Grammy was won by a young artist who did not want to go to rehab. In retrospect, that's a little sad. Wait, am I not the only one that hears that song and is like, you really should have? Also 2008, I'm sorry if I gave stress to any homeowners from back then, the market crashed in 2008. Also for me, I don't know if everybody else remembers this, but the gymnastics team winning a bronze in Beijing. I don't know why that stands up for me more than other people. I think about it sometimes. Also Rails 2.1 was released. And back then, JavaScript really wasn't much of a thing. It's kind of a thing, not really a thing. Also, a small company was founded that you might have heard of. I believe 2008 was the right year. Is that right? Yeah? Okay, yeah. So that was a crazy year. Also, the Ruby survey started. More specifically, Hampton's Ruby survey 2008. Ooh. So this year, I had just decided that, the Ruby community was actually, it was a pretty big deal at that time. HashRocket, like companies like HashRocket were around, Thoughtbot, stuff like that. Lots of big companies were starting to use Rails. And I felt like all the people I knew in the Ruby community, none of us, we'd go to a conference and what you'd hear somebody talk about was one thing. It was really different to find out what people were actually using, what they actually thought, who they were, is kind of a community, just to kind of put something out there. So I built this. It not only looks shady, but I coded it really terribly. Because when you voted, I didn't actually tie together the two votes. Like, it just inserted votes. kind of all at once into the database. There was no unifying survey entry model, which I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Yeah, which has haunted me because in the year 2008, I can't actually run analytics on correlations. So that's fun. But 1,200 people took it. Oh, sorry, by the way, here. I thank my friend for styling the page. So. I think the Wayback Machine lost the styling. I don't think, because that's just browser standard, right? Oh, and also I just randomly named it after myself, because whatever. And 1,200 people took it, so it was a pretty big success. I was pretty happy. That's 1,200 people filled out the first question, because that was the actual only analytics I could run. Oh, and then somebody wrote this. The site went down like 6 months later. I think I messed up my DNS, or I moved my DNS hosting. So some guy's like, why did this turn into shameless self-promotion? I'm like, dude, it started being called the Hampton's Ruby survey when you took it. It's pretty clearly shameless self-promotion. I don't know, I just wanted to bring this up because, you know when you read a comment and it hurts your feelings? I just wanted therapy. So I did it the first year, and then I did it again. Second year, we correlated votes into entries. They're now there. And then I also did it another time, and it's been a while. So this is how many people have taken it. So the first year, about 1,200, less in 2009. This is mostly a function of me promoting or not promoting the survey this year, or like whether or not I got the right retweets at the right time. Like if it made on, what was the Ruby blog that Peter Cooper used to run? Ruby Inside. I don't think he runs anymore, does he? 12, not so good. And then we're back the last couple of years. And you notice I'm missing years here because this is the real chart. Just years where I just never sent it out. And I can explain that. This was me being the CTO of a fast-growing startup. I just didn't, like, that was, yeah. Like, nobody was mentioning it to me, and I wasn't just sitting around thinking about Ruby all day. So, sorry about that. We kind of have a gap. Which is why officially, so it's 8 years have passed, but the 6th survey happened. So some of these, because of the various data, I'm only using, like a lot of them, I'm only using these 4 because data line 4 I think that are statistically significant enough. Please, if you're a statistics nerd, I have ruined statistics in this, okay? There's no standard deviation calculations. I have no clue. I'm just trying to make sure that we used ones that had kind of like a decent sample size. And the data's pretty consistent, even when so some of them I include the lower years, and some of them when they were just super, like, it just fits right into the data. And then sometimes those years would have like a weird spike, and I'm like, I don't think 2012 was like all that weird. So this is where it's not scientific. I'm just gonna make shit up. Who knows, who's read this book? Yeah, all right, so that's good number of people here. This is the Pickaxe Book. Way back in ye old Ruby times, there was no decent online documentation for how to write Ruby. So if it was 2004 and you wanted to learn Ruby, you had to learn some Japanese, basically, or be willing to just kind of pour through and look for code samples and figure it out yourself. Then Dave Thomas came along and worked really hard to figure out the language himself. And basically, the first couple editions of this are really just what should have been the documentation for Ruby, like if it was a regular language. And it was, I think the language was 10 years old at this point, and this book came out. And then it's just like, here's how Ruby works. And everyone's like, this makes a lot of sense. This is a great language. Why aren't we using it? This is the book, I read this before Rails came out. DHH read this and was like, I should do something with this language. It's a pretty huge book. So the first question I asked back then was, have you read the Pickaxe Book? And as you'd expect, time has gone on. It's less valuable now as a book because we have documentation and there's a lot of other options out there. It's still a good book. Which, oh, by the way, that original thing, it says, it was the second edition, it says, now featuring 1.8 features. It's down the corner. So thank God that book's up to date with the 1.8 features. Anyhow, so about 75% though in the early days had read this book because this was the way you learned Ruby. There really weren't any other options. And now I'm pretty sure most of this is just the old timers from back there. But let's I started off talking about myself. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about the gender breakdown. have to ask it. It's a fun question to ask. I gave as many categories as I can. This is not like, this is like a minefield. I've been talking to my like gender neutral friends and being like, all right, how can I possibly ask this question and not offend somebody? And they're like, well, here's what you can do, but you probably still will. So, all right, so women make about 4%, something like that, 4 to 5%, depending on the year. It hasn't changed a lot. This is only the last 2 years, though. Sorry. Oh yeah, are people like? I guess you're just seeing the top of somebody's head. I just thought of that. Anyhow, a little bit of other or non-binary. Prefer not to say is a pretty big chunk, and then yeah, so that's men. I don't know what anybody's talking about. It's fine. We're doing just fine. This is the natural flow of things. Nothing is pushing that down. All right. I also started this year a question, because I wanted to know, like, I think in the early days, a lot of people's job title was Rubyist, like in the very early days of Ruby, because we're kind of the hippies who would do something like that. And so I want to ask that question again. So these are the results for this year on what, as Rubyists, our job titles are. Manager and team leader, almost 50%. That is crazy. I don't really have an explanation for this. I mean, am I the only one who thinks that's like way more than you would think? Obviously, somebody has to work for somebody. I don't know if this is a bias in the kind of people.
People that have time to fill out the survey.
Yeah, people have time to fill out the survey. That's true. That's true. I like it. Well, definitely in this is not a random sample set either, right? Like, I'm not dive bombing into every junior developer. Like, they're not one of my old Ruby friends. So a lot of this is going out to people who I've known a lot in the community. So I think you're definitely gonna see more experienced people too. But it's funny to see how many of the kind of Rubyists who follow me and read Ruby Inside and stuff are managers. Rubyist is 0.4 these days. There's more QA engineers than people who call themselves Rubyists, specifically. Web developer, product manager, creator is pretty high. 41.6% of you have attended a conference this year. I'm very good at statistics, because I'm going to predict 100% of you have. But 41%, I mean, that's pretty interesting for a Ruby community. Like, that seems high. I would have thought less people would go to a conference every year. But I guess this is kind of our main way of learning and meeting each other, especially people who live isolated, staring at their computer all day. 13% have spoken at a conference this year. So that's pretty high. 47% of you, probably not this room, speak more than one language fluently. 74% use English in the workplace, and 58% learned English as their first language. So there's a significant language, variety out there in the Ruby community, way higher than I thought. I would have assumed, so most of the European workplaces I know that do programming, English is the primary language. So I'm really curious about, I have the IP addresses of people who filled it out, and unfortunately I didn't get time I want to run this against where they're located and see how that kind of breaks down, whether or not my idea that in Europe there's more English used in the workplace. But stay tuned for 2016 then. 83% have submitted code to an open source project ever. I asked a follow-up question that's lower, which is within the last year. So all those managers aren't doing open source code. Or I guess they have the time for it, so. What is your employment type? This one's interesting. Basically, sorry, I couldn't find a way to show this better, but it's an actual pretty, like when you look at the percent change, there was a massive, these top two are basically people who are kind of either self-employed or working in some sort of free-form way, and then full-time desk job is here. I know these categories aren't great. It's fine. That's one of the things of doing these surveys is you really have to be comfortable with just being wrong. Like all these questions. Oh, I forgot to mention that. I ask the same questions every year, even if they become dated. So this is a relatively new one. It started in 2010, but every year I add new questions, but I still ask the old ones. So some of those old ones don't make as much sense anymore, but I think that's kind of part of the fun for me at least, just to see how things change. Anyhow, but it's funny, we're getting more desk jobby, not less. I feel like a lot of people back in the early days of Ruby, or at least especially the Rails community, were like, everyone's gonna start a product, everyone's gonna run their own small business. DHH has got it right, like, we're all gonna be running our own 37 signals and living on a beach. As statistics show, that's not happened. As a matter of fact, I think what's happened, and I think we've all seen this, there's a lot more companies using Rails now, larger companies, and I think that's much more common to work at a larger company now doing Rails. Early days, no big company wanted Rails. I think Yellow Pages used it, and that was a huge deal. This is a fun one. Why not, like, what? I get so many comments about this one every year. Because it does just show up kind of randomly right in the middle of the survey for any, I assume people have taken it. The first year it was the last question, but now that 2008, it's like right in the middle. So it's like, what testing framework do you use? Do you believe in God? It's like, whoa, what? Slow down there. I didn't know if I was gonna bring this one up, but I am because I think it's fun. Almost 50% are atheists. Agnostic makes up a further 20%. It actually ends up being, this year, 66% of Rubyists are some form of kind of avowed non-believer, close to it. Monotheists make up 20%, about the same as agnostics. Polytheists got a little bit, New Age got a little bit, and then other. Which, by the way, I gave a lot of categories here, like pretty broad ones. I'm not sure what falls in other. If you have any ideas, let me know. Because I'm like, Wiccan? I don't. Jedi? Oh, that's a good. Oh, maybe. Like that. No, you get too many joke people, right? Like you put that on there, like have to be like, oh, I'm a Jedi. And then you just lump Jedi into agnostic and be like, shut up. All right, I'm gonna go with the second most important question for any developer. What text editor do you use? All right, so. We go with, I think this to me is at least a surprise, and seeing the consistency of these results, I might have to try to give this another try. I tried many years ago to use Vim. Usage has significantly grown. I kind of knew, I mean, I know people use it, and I can use it to like edit a file pretty fast, but not like, you know, there's using Vim, and then there's using Vim, like with like multiple files, and people going like crazy. I just know escape, :WQ, or Q, exclamation point. Which I love when I'm teaching people to program, and I'm like, oh, let's use Vim. And they're like, what do I do? I'm like, well, first hit escape. I'm like, well, I is the first character you need to hit. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I don't know, Unix, 1960, something. All right, so Emacs has lost ground and kind of remains much smaller group than I'd kind of anticipated. I always thought that the rivalry was a lot closer. It doesn't seem to be the case, at least with Rubyists. TextMate, not surprised there. Not surprised. Early days of Ruby, if you didn't use TextMate, you were a weirdo. And the kind of lack of, I mean, that's not good. Sorry, that's Eclipse-based people who made a good showing at the start and then wandered off into doing Android development, I think. Then we got Sublime pops in. Look at that, isn't that cool? Oh, crap. You can't go back just one. So Sublime basically just takes, oh wait, who here switched from TextMate to Sublime? Yeah, and it was like a large people are just like, all right, dude, you need to update TextMate, this is crazy. And then, sorry, Atom has just kind of popped in there, pushing down Sublime a bit. Which I thought more people used Atom because I'm a hipster and I'm just like, whatever, something new. It's just like in the order of these three, it seems like it just kind of fits in. Anyhow, now, we're only halfway through, so I hope you don't hate me already. Most important question, do you use Sass? Yes, about 77%. Actually, maybe, my presenter notes aren't showing up. So I had like the exact numbers down, so now I'm just gonna ballpark them. Oh, all these numbers are going live later today, so we've totally rebuilt the website for this. I'll kind of get to that a little later. So you can see all the real numbers. These are just pretty charts now. So a lot of people use Sass. I'm pretty happy about that. What are your thoughts on Haml? This one's fun. So I have a lot of categories here. I've been asking it since 2008. It's funny, the Sass question, I only started asking in 2012. Sass was not a big thing at first, so I just didn't have it. It was like the little brother, or sister, I guess. I don't know. I have to gender everything, don't I? All right, yeah, so let's simplify this. And I'll group them into haters, meh, and users. Haters, pretty strong and growing, but not crazy. It's just, I think that you could do a weird psychology study on Haml. Like this group is very vehement, and they've got their thing. And hey, it's fine. You don't have to tell me you hate Haml. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I never made it for you. In the nicest way. No, but literally, I didn't make it for... Come on, it'll do it. I believe. All right, that was fun. No, I just was like, hey, I can build this to help designers get better markup and force my coworkers to write better code, and I can read it faster. And I thought everybody was going to hate it when I put it out, and people ended up using it. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not alone. Anyhow, so about 50% use it, which is actually higher than I kind of would have thought. And then there's a lot of meh, which, yeah, whatever. Or don't use it, don't know much about it, don't care, whatever. And I think within that middle zone would also be slim fits in there. So people using, I think other was one of the categories, right? No, I guess I don't use it. All right, yeah, but like we should talk more about Ruby stuff, right? Because it's called the Ruby survey, and I feel like we're just talking about Haml now. What version of Ruby do you use? This is one of the most heartening diagrams. If you run a project with like where version uptake is a thing, or if you've ever struggled with that, this chart looks nice. This is 1.8, this is 1.9, this is 2, 2.1, and 2.2. That is a very nice chart. Good, wait, round of applause everyone here for upgrading your apps. It's mostly not that bad. Depends what terrible things you've been doing, but anyhow. And it makes a nice rainbow, look at that. All right, what's your framework of choice? That's Rails. So I'm gonna remove Rails so that we can actually look at the interesting data. But more than 75% Rails is the web framework for a Rubyist still today, and it hasn't changed much by overall percent. MERB, which, so I don't know how experienced people are here. I feel like these days you could easily just walk into doing Rails and have no clue about MERB. But MERB was almost in a way a fork of Rails by Yehuda Katz and some other people. Ezra started it, right? Rest in peace. And Yehuda worked on it, and they just were like, oh, we're gonna make a more beautifully constructed Rails. The dream was pretty good. And then they ended up merging it into Rails, so MERB went away. Actually, the Wikipedia mobile site was built on MERB all the way up till a couple years ago. So that was what I built it in. I did like billions of pages, which was fun. Sinatra kind of took over some of what MERB had and is really held steady at about 20%, or sorry, not 20%, see if I had my numbers. This much. This is science. I think it's been holding strong about this much. Other. So it's funny, other is definitely kind of stayed about the same, but it's dropped. And you'll notice we're trending down overall on these. No web work seems pretty consistent. We got a couple, I included some of the years with less data here, sorry. Actually, I probably should remove that. This would have looked way smoother. Professional. Grape just shows up there at the end, which I've been using a lot with Rails, so I would include it. But it is technically a web framework on its own. Rack only is way smaller than I anticipated. I hear a lot of people talk about building, down to the metal rack apps, but it seems like people aren't really building them that much. And then Padrino's come in right there at the end, which is a kind of Sinatra plus, with a pretty good showing for its first year on the survey. But it's funny, you see actually people have moved back to Rails generally. Like, it's not losing traction within the community, which is pretty interesting. Because yeah, especially if you take the peaks, on average people are using Rails. What's your preferred Ruby interpreter? Well, same problem. That's Matt's Ruby interpreter. And it's pretty much everybody. Let's remove it and try that again. So JRuby, It's pretty flat. And this was asked 2008. It's remained just above 3%. Pretty flat. Rubinius took off with a good showing, has not taken off as a project. JRuby, which was Microsoft, was going to build a version of Ruby for .NET, and they kind of abandoned the project, I think about 2012, so that's gone to pretty much nothing. Maybe it still exists? People can correct me on that. Does it exist still?
I thought the guy left Microsoft, and that's why it died.
Yeah, that's what I think. Well, I think they were. I left Microsoft. I feel like they weren't maybe giving it the love that. I don't blame them. I was like, why the hell is Microsoft building this? Like, it's a nice language, but, you know. Other. I don't. Is there one I'm missing that's huge? What? Ruby Motion? Yeah. I've used, yeah. No, I mean, you're right. I should add that one next year, because, yeah, that's a lot of other. That's as much other as JRuby, or Rubinius, at least. I feel like something that's interesting here is if you're relatively recent to the Ruby community, I feel like I hear much less talk about these also. Maybe JRuby is a thing to go in production in certain situations when you need libraries. But, I mean, 2008, there was a lot of talk. You went to RailsConf, or like RubyConf or RailsConf, a lot of talks about these different projects replacing the Matt's Ruby interpreter. And it seems like it hasn't happened. It seems like it's kind of stalled. So sorry if you were a big fan of one of these projects. They don't seem to be getting ground. What is your preferred testing framework? I think this has a lot of history in it too. So TestUnit, which used to be the default that shipped with Rails. It's funny, even in 2010, it's pretty far in the future. I think 2008 we would have seen a bigger chunk here. But you know, it's the thing that shipped default. It doesn't have a ton of users. About, what was it, like 12%, something like that. Shoulda, which I know isn't technically a full framework, but whatever, back off. Big loss. Mini test, which is basically, I think, what most people use now. It kind of replaced TestUnit. So most people just go in, one of the first steps is, I don't know, maybe even Rails ships with it now. But mini test is basically TestUnit, just mini. Now, RSpec. So I've been using RSpec, I kind of realized, pretty exclusively for the last couple years without like thinking about it or feeling much like, because I'm not a crazy RSpec person, and some of the syntax drives me crazy. What the hell? But yeah, I guess there's a reason. I mean, I think we've chosen how we test, so that's good. And then Cucumber, not popular anymore. I thought that would be way bigger percent, because I remember that being a pretty significant, like, crazy Cucumber people. But it's kind of pretty much lost everything. In the top, I don't have anything there, is basically I don't test. So that's the rest, or I don't have no framework. What web server to use in production? Mongrel. Definitely lost a lot of ground. I remember early days of HashRocket. Zed was hanging around working on Mongrel a lot. But yeah, it's lost ground, poor thing. Passenger has also lost ground, which once again I'll say is funny because I have recently been flipping a lot of stuff to Passenger, especially when I see instability with some of the more fast ones that don't do as good of management like in memory. Though when I switch to Passenger, things like per request maybe gets a little slower, but on average the thing doesn't flail. So this is really curious to me that we've seen a loss, because in my own experience, I feel like I've moved from some of these other ones to Passenger. Thin has remained thin. That's another long-term favorite of mine. Unicorn came from nowhere and grabbed a ton of people. And then Puma has kind of recently grabbed a ton also. So that's most servers. And then there were some other ones listed that just didn't even chart or were not interesting to talk about. But they're in the full statistics online if you want to. If your favorite isn't listed there. What NoSQL database do you like? All right, so this one's interesting. Yeah. Actually, I do have a question of do you have NoSQL fever, is the way I phrase the question. I think 75% are like no. But this is which one most interests you? Because I want to see, especially when I first asked this in 2014, I feel like it had gone from a little side project to something that people use. seriously, obviously, to say an obvious statement. And so we needed to add the question. So Voldemort, which I don't know a ton about, seems to be extremely popular. Mongo, which I do know so this is 2014 results, I do know a bit about, is pretty big there. These other guys are not doing much. Elasticsearch was not included in 2014, and so something interesting happens in 2015 when I include it, which is that it basically comes in around 15% of users and just knocks everybody else down. Which is really interesting to me, and I think it's part of this, I can't figure out yet, and I feel like we need a clarifying question next year, is you can use Elasticsearch as an actual kind of primary data store. I have heard of people using that, and so I don't know if that's become way more popular than, like, it's not a cool hack, it's become a real thing. But I think it also might be just the phrasing of the question, if you don't use any NoSQL databases, except for search indexing on your site, you like Elasticsearch because you're not using it as your primary data store. So stay tuned for next year. We're going to get some clarification on this question because I'm really curious to see. Yeah, and which, by the way, Voldemort by percent lost less than everyone else. So that's the one that remained the most, or I guess gained against all the other ones. Who here uses Voldemort in production? See, what? Are people just picking the name? You do?
Well, I just want to ask, like, I wonder how many people just answered Voldemort because the word said Voldemort.
No, yeah, I mean, it could be for lulz, but that's a lot of people. Sorry, and I think the numbers, I mean, I expected a lot of trolling to kind of happen in this. Like, over the years, I just assumed, and I thought somebody was going to write a bot, so I had some basic, detection, just to see, like, did too many requests come in, were they spaced evenly, look for the obvious stuff that some lazy person could write in 2 seconds. And like so far, everybody, I think it's pretty small, so people follow me on Twitter and they're trying not to be a-holes. Yeah, anyhow, so, which, by the way, obviously the Sass number gets influenced by who's tweeting it out, I think, so. Yeah, so that could be it. But so, wow, I thought we'd have at least one hand. Nobody here uses Voldemort.
It's interesting, though.
See, it's interesting, okay. So it's like it's a thing that we're all like, it's a new technology that makes a lot of sense and looks good. I need to go learn about it.
I mean, interest doesn't necessarily correlate to wanting
To use it,
that in Framework
right.
or something else.
So some of these questions say, what do you prefer, which ones interest you, and then others say, what do you use in production? And I've been trying to put them up at the top. It does sway the answers. There's no perfect way to do this. I just make it up. I'll take a pull request if somebody wants to figure out some magical way to fix this. Oh, sorry, let's talk about JavaScript pretty fast. I'm kind of running a little, I think we're doing our own time. Let's talk about JavaScript. You guys already talking about JavaScript? Because I feel like there's a bit of history here too that needs to be talked about, and the person who I'm going to talk about doesn't self-promote. And I'm very good at self-promotion. So this is what JavaScript looked like when I started my career. I'm sure we've all seen this or written it. It was copy-pasta code. It was making a Blink style that worked cross-browser. Things like this for loop, just there's no, it kind of just fits. I don't know. What, like, yeah, all right, it's crap. Window.onload equals start blink. Really, sorry. Way worse. I was trying to find it's funny how Google, by the way, pushes down really old pages. I was trying to find, like one of those things I copy and pasted to make a carousel hat work in like years ago, but couldn't find, this is the best I could get. And so this is why JavaScript was hated for so long, because people are like, all right, I guess I'll slog in here and just twiddle with it and break on every other browser, and I don't really know what I'm doing. And then this guy came along. Does anybody know who this is? No? Oh, I hear whispers. Okay, I heard it in a whisper. This is Sam Stevenson. Sam and I have known each other forever. Actually, I knew him back in university, just randomly. Sorry, not for any computer skills. And then we kind of met up randomly later. I remember way back then, he was just like, well, JavaScript's a pretty cool language. And I was like, you're an idiot. I was like, you have no taste in languages. And he was doing Ruby way back. He was talking about this about 2003, something like that. He had some libraries he was using himself. And then he released it in 2004 5. See my notes. How do you put notes back on? This little thing up here. On. Presenter notes, check. Yeah. Ooh. All right. Yeah, 2005 from my notes. And sorry, this is prototype. Who here has used prototype? Wait, who here has never heard of prototype? Okay, no, it's fine. Like, because it's not shipped with anything, and I think the statistics, you know what's happened with prototype. Prototype looked like this, which looks like code now. You can make a class, you can initialize it. If anybody's using any of the kind of modern web framework or JavaScript frameworks or anything, it's just like this is what you do all day. Like this is it, and nobody else was doing this before. I mean, if they were doing it in their cubicle, not telling anyone about it. But he built this framework that allowed us to create real classes and structure our code and break things apart. And this is crazy because it was a real language. All of a sudden, like, his mission was, it's a real language. You can actually write code that isn't the worst thing on the planet. The worst. I said the worst, not the best. Ruby's the most. But it's a real language. And then John Resnick came along, who is awesome, so no hate on him. And about a year later came out with jQuery. Very much, I mean, when I've talked about it, he was very much influenced by prototype. He just had a lot of different opinions on how things worked. Sam was much more doing the kind of ES6 structured classes was his concern. And jQuery was much more concerned. I mean, it did do some of the selector stuff, but the main concern was the structuring of code. And then jQuery, as we all know, $ parentheses, some selector. It's what we do all the time. That was the #1 thing. So I really focused on building, .click and being able to just quickly build click events that worked cross-browser. So they had different emphases. And it's funny, I really feel like prototype was definitely ahead of its time in some ways because they weren't concentrating on selectors and just manipulating the DOM. It was concentrating on this kind of code organization where jQuery, which is what I use and pretty much everybody uses now, really focused on, all right, you need a click event, let me help you, and kind of took over. So that's why every web page now has 3 versions of jQuery embedded. But I feel like Sam does not get any credit. I need to go edit the Wikipedia page for jQuery and do the influenced by stuff because he's so shy. He's one of the shyest people ever. Don't go to him at a conference because he doesn't like that. Like in a nice guy way, because he's very shy. Anyhow, so in 2008 when I first asked the question, prototype, so this was pretty late. Prototype was 3 years old, it shipped with Rails. jQuery did not ship with Rails and had definitely taken off at this point, 2 years in. And you see Moo used to be a thing, kind of. Other none or don't do JS sit over there. And this is one of those questions that I've asked every single year without changing any of the categories. Which is important because I want to see how it changed. All right, prototype. Yep, there goes the losing. jQuery went up from that first year, but then has actually kind of remained about the same. Moo, just death. Moo. Other has really taken off, so other includes a lot of stuff here. So that's a meaty other section, which is why I re-asked this question later. What is your preferred MVC framework? It's not a great question. Some of these aren't exactly technically MVC frameworks, but whatever. Modern web frameworks, I didn't want to ask the same question. What the hell's a framework anyway? Like, jQuery is definitely not a framework. Right? Don't you need a folder for frameworks? I'm pretty sure that's the rule. If it's got folders, it's a framework. All right, XJS. Somebody demanded I put this on there. Sorry, fans of XJS. There's a thin blue line. That's a movie, right? It's like Police or something. Yeah. Knockout.js. Backbone. We know that there's kind of been a collapse in that community, and it's showing. React appeared out of nowhere, getting a nice big chunk. This has only been 2 years, by the way. Sorry, so in the last 2 years. Ember, holding steady. Not a huge change, 1 or 2% change. It's funny, I have switched to using Ember, and a lot of people I know have in the last 2 years. So I'm kind of, that one's kind of interesting to me, because I wonder, like, I know some people left or something. Somebody's got to be replacing us. Angular, losing people, but not a ton. This is definitely a 3-horse race or 4-horse race, kind of. I mean, like right now it is anyone's game, which is kind of cool to see because I know that this is the stuff I'm sure like a lot of people are. I spend a lot of time reading about various fights and keynotes and fun stuff online between all these frameworks, and there's a reason why they're all like got their gloves on in a good way, though. I think a great way for us because they're all working really hard and building really cool stuff. So, all right. So the missing bit there was some other frameworks that people asked for, and also I don't do JS. Which brings me to this question that I've asked since 2010. How much JavaScript do you usually write? So what do you think's gonna happen on this graph? I would assume, I'll speak for you, that JavaScript usage is gonna go up, right? More people spend more time writing JavaScript since 2010. Some, pretty flat. A little bit of drop in some. Rarely, I mean, I don't know, I feel like that's just some on it. A ton, a slight growth, just slight, and then never avoid it's remain the same. This was very surprising to me this year. I thought this happened last year, and I was like, all right, we'll wait. Like, there's all that attention on those other frameworks. This number is going to start shifting. It really hasn't. It stayed pretty constant. Yes.
All of those are relative terms, though, so people's idea of how much is a lot could have changed over the years.
Yep. So you're saying that, yeah, people, what a lot is could change for people. I think you'd see more, even if that was true. I mean, I would say I write a lot more JavaScript now. Like, I write a lot of Ruby, but I also write a lot of JavaScript. And I certainly write a lot more, like, iOS code, too. Like, my life, like, that's what's happened. So, I mean, I feel like these numbers would be a bigger change. I mean, certainly never avoid it has remained the same. And rarely's remained the same. Anyhow, yeah, it's probably, there's probably some bias there, but I still think it's interesting. Email me if you have an idea on how to ask the question better, too.
Because those people are stop writing Ruby? Or...
No, so, I mean, so I have, yeah, I don't actually think I really put in the Ruby usage question. It's is Ruby your primary language? And that one's actually held pretty steady. I have a couple other about how well the community is doing. Yeah, but it's, sorry, it seems like there hasn't been a big drop in Ruby usage, which I know some people, you know, various community members have kind of left the Ruby community and been like, this thing's done, it's over, why is anybody using it? React wins, or something. Not React, no, Rust, sorry, Rust. Yeah, so I think it's a yes and also on that subject. So like, I wrote a large production system in Go at MoveWeb. It was first prototyped in Ruby, and then we kind of productionized it and built it when we had a ton of traffic. But like, I didn't stop being a Rubyist. Like, I still used it for everything else except for the server that needed to process 1 billion like page transformations a day. Like, that server, I thought Go was probably a better choice than Ruby. But yeah, so it's funny. People, there's not been a lot of people who've left the Ruby community, as far as I can tell, especially not by the numbers. Okay, so CoffeeScript, it's just over 50% of Rubyists write CoffeeScript, which is interesting to me. I don't actually write CoffeeScript. Every time I start working, it's kind of like Vim. I start working on it, and then I'm like, this is okay. This is too much to learn, which is probably how people feel about Hamel. This is Sass first CoffeeScript. Just wanted to say. What flavor of JavaScript do you prefer to write? So this is an interesting one, and a new one, because this didn't used to be a question, right? Like, what do you mean? I write JavaScript. Yeah, so CoffeeScript, and this is obviously from a Rubyist perspective, is by far the most popular. Standard JavaScript comes in, and then ES6 at 9.7. I don't write JavaScript. Same number we see from the earlier questions. They hang around there. ClojureScript, TypeScript, and poor Dart. Natalie Weizenbaum, the kind of person I co-created Sass with, works on the Dart team for the last 5 years, and I keep trying to tell her. Sorry, Natalie. Yeah, so sorry if you're a fan of one of these. But ES6, I'm pretty surprised by. I think that's mostly Ember people, because that's what I write now. But yeah, CoffeeScript's still holding strong pretty much against these guys when you ask this question. So Maybe I'll take more time to learn it. Let's time travel into the future for a second. I'm renaming this thing Asker, because it sounds like a douchey startup and I love it. Yeah, because I don't want to call it Hampton's Ruby survey. Like, too mature to put my name on stuff. Now I'm so humble. So I bought the domain asker.tel, because that sounds funny. And then I looked at it and it looks like this. And I was like, I'm trying to change the DNS and it's not working. And so I talked to the support person. .tel domains can't be hosted in the traditional sense. DNS on these domains is hard set by the registry. You can just edit the information on the telephone page. Sorry, I just bought a freaking domain that had no notes on it. So I'm like, I understand it was a randomly suggested domain name. I was looking for Asker and it was listed as a suggestion. Like, and then this is the worst. It's always good practice to familiarize yourself with the type of domain before you purchase it. The suggestions are there to indicate availability. You're still subject to the eligibility requirement. All TLDs do not operate the same. Apparently, some of them don't let you host a website. I didn't think that was on the list. I thought like maybe a year somebody from that country could complain or something, but .tel, which is right here on the list of suggestions, like a normal option. .software, can I only upload binaries to it? I'm all right. Anyhow, .tel is a scam. Tell your friends. We're learning. All right, let's go back to the future again. We should talk about something besides the, and I'll tell you the whole future in so many slides. VM is like a thing, like a legitimate thing. I have that slide twice. JS is like a thing, but not as much as you'd think. That is, those numbers have stayed relatively stable about JavaScript usage. Putting data onto slides is really hard. There's a lot of copy and pasting CSVs. It was fun. Okay, so this is the question that was most heartening to me, and I added this year, and I loved the answer. I asked, is the Ruby community on the right track? And 86% said yes. So when somebody tweets something and starts complaining about the Ruby community, or is like, it's so dead, it's so dumb, no one's where it's at, tell them to shut up, because we don't all agree with that. Most of us think we're on the right track, and that we're doing the right stuff, and we're building good stuff with Ruby, and it's an awesome language. So stop listening to the haters, because it's basically trolling. So just ignore them. The final lesson we learned is everyone loves Sass. I will not overcapitalize ever. It's Sass, not Sass. So don't forget that. So later today, I now have asker.me. I think it's cute. It's a terrible name, but I'm just going with it. So this will be, I'll be pushing this up later. I'll be tweeting about it. Just in the last little bit, a little promotion. So this is my new company and project-y thing. It's fully open sourced. It's a dictionary, online collaborative dictionary. After working for Wikipedia, Wiktionary is a hot mess. It's the only open dictionary basically out there of any sort of community or quality at all. But it's also terrible. And it's unusable, it's unparsable, it's not structured at all. It's just Wikipedia, but with like just random articles with words, unstructured. It's crazy. So I want to fix that. So everything's open source here. It's wordset.org and github.com/wordset. If you know any like people who like words, I'm not really into words that much, but somebody's got to fix this, because it's not okay that big companies are the people who actually get to write our dictionaries. Like the English language, all the dictionaries are written by companies, big companies with lobbyists and marketing teams. And I'm not saying that it's like that nefarious, but like how come this doesn't exist? Like we can write our own damn dictionaries. This isn't that hard, people. Like, and plus think of all the English majors who need something to do. They're looking for work. Anyhow, so this is what I'm working on now. It's kind of random, but somebody's got to do it. That's my like career motto, is when I look at something and I'm like, why isn't somebody doing this? How is this not a thing? Like with Sass, like I really thought I was like, there is a way to nest my CSS and write variables. And I was like searching the internet and like, why doesn't this exist? I'm like, all right, fuck it, I'll build it. Actually, I'll convince Natalie to build it, was the real way. She's a much better programmer than me. So WordSet, I'm building it. It's an Ember app with a Rails API backend using Grape. And I chose Mongo, which you can talk to me after. I think it's actually a good fit. I'm not a major fan of Mongo, but I think this particular use case actually makes a lot of sense as a long-term hater of Mongo. But this one was like, I went through, the comparison things where you're like, here's what these are good at. And I was like, shit. It's Mongo's the one that checks all the boxes I was looking for. Anyhow, so I'd love your help. Follow me at hcatlin. I am just as funny on Twitter as I am in real life. That was supposed to be, this is not funny. Anyhow, see, just as funny. And I'll be tweeting out the link after this. So may the force be with you, Jedis, since I guess that's the religion.